All right, let's talk about something that's probably made you scratch your head if you've ever bought or refinanced a home here in Las Vegas, the home appraisal fee. It just kind of shows up as this random number on your closing statement, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and unlock what's really behind that number. So let's just dive right in. So let's start with the big mystery right off the bat. How on earth can the very same service, a home appraisal, have such a massive price range? I mean, you could get a quote for $300 and then see another one for almost $2,000. It's confusing, to say the least, and it makes it feel impossible to know if you're actually getting a fair price.
And I'm sure if you've tried to Google this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get hit with this just dizzying list of prices, and they all seem to claim they're the standard rate. The reason it's so confusing is exactly what we're going to unpack right now. We're going to solve what I like to call the big price mystery. And the very first clue, the key to unlocking this whole thing, is realizing that the fee you pay isn't always what the expert doing the work actually gets to keep. Okay, so here's the big secret. When you're getting an appraisal for a mortgage, that fee you see on your statement is almost always getting split. Yep, a huge chunk of your money is going somewhere else entirely before it ever gets to the appraiser who actually walked through your home. So, where does it go?
Well, it turns out it's going to a hidden middleman in the process. This is the key player, the one that explains so much of the inflated costs you see when you're getting a loan. And that middleman is called an appraisal management company, or AMC for short. You see, after the 2008 housing crisis, new rules were put in place to create a sort of firewall between banks and appraisers. AMCs jumped in to fill that role, managing the whole process for the lender. They handle paperwork, they check for compliance, they do quality review, and you guessed it, they take a pretty big fee for that service. Let's look at a real-world example, because this is where it gets crazy. So a borrower pays a total of $695 for their appraisal. You'd think that money goes to the expert who valued the house, right? Nope. In this case, the licensed appraiser only got $301. The AMC, the administrative middleman, pocketed the other $394. They made more than the actual appraiser. And believe me, that last example wasn't a fluke. It is totally common for these management companies to keep anywhere from 40 to a really staggering 70% of the total fee you pay. Just think about that for a second. For every dollar you pay, up to 70 cents might not even go to the professional who's valuing your single biggest asset. This, right here, is the single biggest reason for those wild price swings we talked about. So now that we know about the middleman, it starts to make sense that not all appraisals are created equal. Let's break down the three main paths you might go down because, as you'll see, the price changes dramatically depending on which path you're on. You can really see the difference laid out here. A standard mortgage appraisal, well, that has the AMC markup baked in, so you're usually looking at a cost of around $575 to $750. But look what happens when you hire an appraiser directly, say for setting a list price or for an estate. The cost is often lower because you've just cut out that middleman. And then you've got this third category, VA loans, which runs on a completely transparent, preset fee.
So, for any non-lending reason you might need an appraisal, just remember this. When you hire the appraiser yourself, you are cutting out that entire administrative layer. You're paying the professional directly for their expertise. It's a much cleaner, more direct transaction.
Now let's talk about the big exception to pretty much every rule in this process, the VA loan appraisal. Honestly, the system they have for veterans is a fantastic model for how clear and fair this whole thing could be. Here in Clark County, the VA sets the fee for a single-family home appraisal. It's $675. That's it, period. There are no hidden fees, no confusing ranges, because the entire process is managed by the Department of Veterans Affairs. And all of that money goes directly to the VA-approved appraiser. It's hands down the most transparent system out there. Of course, the AMC isn't the only thing that affects the price. So let's quickly touch on a few other key factors that can change the cost of any appraisal, whether it's for a mortgage or a direct hire situation. A huge factor is just the complexity of the property itself. Think about it. A standard tract home in a planned community is way faster to appraise than, say, a sprawling custom home with a bunch of unique features. Same goes for the intended use. An appraisal for a simple loan is one thing, but one that has to be rock solid in court for a divorce settlement, that's a whole other level of work, and it might cost up to that $1,900 figure we saw earlier because of the extra documentation and potential court time. And you know, for some situations, you might not even need a full-blown appraisal. Sometimes lenders can use what's called a desktop appraisal. They just use public data, no one even visits the property, and that runs about $300 to $500. A drive-by is what it sounds like. They just check out the exterior. And that can save you $50 to $100. It just depends on what the lender needs.
Now, here's something really cool. If you're here in Las Vegas, you actually have a unique advantage. Nevada is one of the very few states with a law that forces AMCs to disclose on the closing statement exactly how much of your fee they kept and how much actually went to the appraiser. That transparency is a really powerful tool for us as consumers. Okay, so what does all this mean for you? Let's put everything we've talked about together into a simple, practical playbook you can use to budget for this and actually understand what's going on.
So here's your simple cheat sheet. If you're getting a typical mortgage, plan on budgeting in that $575 to $750 range. If you need to hire an appraiser directly for something that's not for a loan, your cost will probably fall somewhere between $450 and $800. And if you're a veteran using your VA loan benefit, you've got the easiest path. Just look up the clear, standardized VA fee for our area. Simple as that. You know the goal here was to demystify that appraisal fee. And now you know the secrets. You know about the hidden middleman, the different paths an appraisal can take, and the other factors that move the needle on the final cost. So I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you know where the money really goes, are you going to look at that line item on your next closing statement a little bit differently?